Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan, and back with me this week from his 1 week off, Julio Vela, JV. Victoria filled in admirably for you last week.
I saw that. She's a phenomenal part of the team. Oh, I would love.
Booth.
Yeah, Vic, this seat right here, it's all you, babe. It's all you. It's all you.
And joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time, he is a longtime viewer, I think, and be now a guest on the show, Patrick Ngwolo. Patrick.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's. We're going to be with you for the next hour, ladies and gentlemen, talking criminal justice issues. You can join in. 713-807-1794 is the number. We'll open the phone lines up halfway through the program or so. Also, you can hit us up on Twitter at HCCLA_TV. Before we get into anything, we have to have talk.
Okay, let's do it.
Because I read your bio.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. Now, Julio and I are okay because of your choice in law school. Mm-hmm. You chose the right school.
Okay.
For law school.
For law school.
That
okay.
being the one in Austin on
right.
40 acres. The
University of Texas
at Austin.
The University of Texas.
So we're giving you a slight hall pass for that.
Okay.
But you're going to have to justify why the hell you went to Norman and the University of Oklahoma because you got two Longhorns here.
Well, I think I left the University of Oklahoma and I brought some swagger to the University of Texas. So I think it's, I think we were bringing some of that winning magic because, we pounded you guys so much.
Oh my gosh! Hold on now.
Yeah.
Well, when I got there, you guys started to win. As Vince Young had his little run.
Okay, so you're thinking you brought the magic.
I think I brought some magic.
Oh, you got it in. Would you come in 05 law school?
I came in 03 and I finished in 05.
Okay,
wow.
So, yeah.
You brought the incoming class in as your theory.
That's my theory.
I'm predicting at least a 10 or 11 win season.
For us? Mm-hmm. Or them?
Us. Us.
Who wins the conference?
That's bold,
you think
dude.
Texas wins the conference?
I have very high expectations. No, I have standard expectations. Really, the University of Texas at Austin.
Okay.
I think your standards may be set a little too high for this
10
year.
win. We're going 10 or 11 win season.
Next year.
Yeah.
This year.
I'm predicting 8 or 9.
Do they have a quarterback?
Well, they have a couple, but we'll see if they actually have one that they can commit to for the season.
That's true. We'll see.
But obviously, started college football season, so that's heavy on a lot of our minds. And as I'm sure, fantasy football drafts and everything. I know I got mine on Sunday night. But, we talked a little bit at the end of last week's show about what was going on at Ohio State with the domestic violence situation. I kind of want to circle back to that. And, it's 3 dudes around a table, so it might not be the most diverse, appropriate audience to talk about it. But I do want to bring it up, and feel free, ladies and gentlemen, call in, tweet us, because I think this is an important topic to discuss because it's really coming out in the news a lot here. We had this week, the suspension of Urban Meyer for the first 3 games of the season because he lied at the Big Ten media conference about his knowledge of a domestic violence situation. Poorly handled by him, no doubt about it. But, he's now being suspended ex post facto. I think it's like 3 years later almost. Yeah. It's a dicey subject, isn't it?
For three criminal defense attorneys, I'm sure we're passionate about it. I think I'm going to jump out here on a limb.
Well, that's what we do every week, Patrick, so join the club.
The climate, I think, there's no such thing as like restorative justice anymore. It's like we're just literally ready to nail people to the cross.
Well, especially in the area of domestic violence, and we've all defended it. And, I would like to get a panel of female lawyers on here as well at some point to talk about it, because I know a lot of them have defended males in the same situation. And just today, I heard, in talking about the Roberto Osuna situation with the Astros, a lot of the Astros are now coming out and saying, look, when, he's told us what's happened here, and I think a lot of people are going to have to eat their words when they find out the true facts of this. And that seems to be, I don't want to say in every case, but because it's not. Clearly there are valid, serious issues with domestic violence, and there are serious cases out there where it happens. But there are cases that, you know, the circumstances are not always what they seem.
Right.
Is there a difference between, let's say, a public university versus a private entity like the Astros on disciplining or imposing sanctions for these types of allegations? Do you think there's a difference, or should there be a difference?
Well, I think probably the probably key distinction is I think public universities probably have the they've got to be more they've got to be transparent with it. Like
They fall under Title IX.
Yeah, they fall under Title IX. They've got to be transparent. They're public institutions. You know, for instance, University of Texas, all their employees are accountable to all of us who are the part of the taxpayers. But I think investigation, you know, I think due process in both cases. But I think if there's probably something where I'm like, maybe the transparency of how it all went down probably. If the institution had handled it where, hey, we've got this issue, we're handling it in-house, this is what's happening, you know, versus like 3 years later it all comes out and now you're like, you know, trying to do damage control.
Do y'all think that individuals accused of these types of allegations, or even things that are similar, do you think they deserve any due process?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Title IX hearing process is a joke. I mean, if everybody really saw what happened in a Title IX procedure that goes on at colleges, universities, law schools, medical schools, it's a joke. I mean, what was the old word? Travis mockery.
Right.
I mean, that's what the Title IX hearing process is for both sides potentially. I mean, and it's gotten worse for the accused in the whole situation. I mean, your lawyer is allowed to sit in the room. They can't participate in the process. You cannot ask adversarial questions of witnesses. They're not put on cross-examination.
Right, and even just the whole posture, you're not. They don't even want you to say you're the lawyer.
Right.
You're an advocate. They've got words where you're just kind of like there. You're almost an onlooker.
Yeah.
And so sometimes even just getting documentation, like, no, we're going to send it to him.
Yeah.
And like, no, send it to me.
Right.
So for the viewers, in a Title IX proceeding, you may be a student, let's say at a university, and you're accused of some sort of like sexual harassment or some sort of sexual assault or those types of things. And you will have to, I guess it's a petition or have a type of administrative type of hearing where you'll have to present your case, but if in front of a panel that may or may not be lawyers, may or not be schooled in burdens of proof, and if I'm not mistaken, as far as things that are allowed in a court of law or not allowed or disallowed by, let's say, rules of evidence are admissible in these types of proceedings. Am I correct or am I not? I've never participated in these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. I mean, it depends, and it also, frankly, depends on who your investigator is. It depends on, you know, the school and the climate. Like I've done work here at the University of Houston, but I've also done work at Baylor University, and it's kind of two different atmospheres for the same kind of.
What kind of work? I mean, are you defending people or are you?
So students who've, you know, the whole sexual harassment, but then also sexual assault cases.
And are these students so an individual, let's say you're a student in a school and you get accused of these kind of things, what are the consequences of these types of allegations upon a student? Are they like expulsion from the school, suspension from the school?
It can be everything from here's a reprimand in your file to an expulsion from school to we're going to refer this to whatever local PD because we think it needs to be prosecuted.
And you've handled these types of cases?
Yeah, I have.
Wow. How have you felt that it's different than a court proceeding?
That I hesitate to say this, but I don't know if those students get due process. Because literally once you've been accused, there's almost a presumption that you're guilty from the beginning. They'll do
Not
it.
all that much different from regular criminal court.
Right. Except,
frankly.
there's no judge to like go say, hey, look, I don't know if this process is fair. Like literally, they run the process. They tell you what to do. I mean, you've got a rule book and all of that, but you're an observer. You really talk through your client. He's got to be aware enough to like take your advice and actually try to put it into practice. It's
Are there remedies? Like, what would be the remedy? Like, oops, I'm sorry. Other than, okay, so let's say the remedy is you get to stay in school. I mean, are those some of the relief? Is that some of the relief that's provided in these types of hearings
For who?
for the accused? Let's say.
Well, I mean, look, if they can, if they make a negative finding, but if they make a positive finding, the likelihood of some sort of suspension or expulsion is pretty high.
Yeah.
And you don't have any remedies. I mean, you can appeal up to the dean.
That's what I was going to say. Are there any review? And so the review of this, let's say, administrative tribunal at the base level, is there? So you say you maybe appeal to the dean, but even so, I've recently been involved, and this is why I'm inquiring so much. There is no remedy. The remedy is you can appeal to the dean,
right.
and the dean says,
Nope.
sorry, yeah, well, is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the last, because they view it as an administrative issue.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult subject, right? Because obviously you want them to take sexual assaults and sexual harassment seriously, but you also want the accused to have some moniker of due process in the whole thing.
Have you seen the article? And I don't know if it's fake news or not, okay?
So hard to tell these days,
Right.
right?
But the lady who rolled her eyes about when she made up a story about being raped, and then these athletes got, expelled from the school, and they lost their football scholarships and all these kind of things. And then she gets caught, and then as the judge is sentencing her to, I think, probation initially, she rolls her eyes. And then as she rolls her eyes, the judge puts her in jail for a condition of probation. I mean, and that's it? And then these guys' lives are ruined?
Yeah, and I've recently handled a case where it was alleged that he sexually assaulted a woman, but after the investigation, it turns out that she indeed, that she may have sexually assaulted him. And so at the end, they said, hey, would you like to have her investigated? And my guy was like, look, I can't go through another year of this because my life's ruined. Everyone out there thinks I did this because this wasn't private.
Right.
It was the whole campus knew about it. His grades suffered. He was on his way to medical school. His grades dropped a whole point. Right. And so he was like, look, this was so punitive, just the investigatory process, that justice for me is just let's just call it a day. I don't want to pursue anything else. I can't go through this for another year. So, the guy's lives is irretrievably ruined, and I think, those Title IX situations, I think they are trying to look out for the well-being of people who may be accused of sexual assault. But I just think in the climate that we're in, they need some lawyers to come in and say, hey, what's the process whereby which we can actually...
And the flip side of that is there's, for as many who don't get their due process as being the accused, there are very many accusers who don't get their due process of actually getting a meaningful hearing, who get anything. I mean, there's just as much of that. I mean, look what happened at Baylor. Baylor's a prime example. I mean, how many times, and look what happened with the situation at Ohio State. It came out today that Ohio State, when the wife made the police report, that somebody from Ohio State was there to tell her to retract the statement because it would look bad for the university.
Wow.
So, I mean, for as many people on the accused side that don't get their due process, there's many accusers who don't get their due process or are silenced because of it. So,
what do you think a fair system to handle those?
I don't know. I mean, that's that's the thing. I mean, what is the fair system? I mean, I'd love to get everybody else's thoughts on it if you have any. Tweet us, call in when we open the phone lines. But I mean, that's what I struggle with. I mean, I've sat here on both sides. I've represented accusers and I've represented accused in those systems, and I struggle to find what the balance is. You know, because it's an imperfect system, like we talk about with our own criminal justice system, and there's another case I want to talk about, which you know, what happened in Dallas this week, that illustrates how imperfect our system has been, and this is just one example of it, of what goes on in these types of cases. But you know, I want to flip to what happened in Dallas this week as well as another example of that, and we had the police officer who was convicted and sentenced to 15 years for the murder of a teenager, of an African American teenager, and first time I can remember it happening, you know, in a long time, that we've had a police officer not just indicted, but convicted indicted. And actually sentenced to a prison term.
It's my understanding that his partner, so the defense was a defense of third party, is from what I was gathering. In other words, in the state of Texas, an individual is allowed to protect a third party and may use deadly force only when that individual subjectively and objectively it's reasonable for them to use deadly force. So in other words, they think someone else is going to get killed. At that point, I can use deadly force so long as it's a subjective, objective type of test. It's my understanding that the officer who he was trying to protect, so the defense of the third party, that officer said, no, I didn't feel fear for my life, and I didn't fear anything that I was going to die or anything like that. And then the defendant then testified that I subjectively, objectively thought that he was in fear for his life, so I was able to shoot to kill. And the jury said, nope, sorry, buddy, you did wrong. 15 years for somebody who committed and who was convicted by a jury for murder while wearing a badge. Residual doubt? They felt a little bit bad for the guy? I don't know, man. You're talking about basically, hey, cop has a badge, murdered somebody.
Right. 15 years.
15 years? He'll have to
Parole
serve
on 8.
Half his time without good conduct time. Half his time he'll serve 8.
Yeah.
Or at least be eligible for parole at that point. You think somebody compromised, or what do you think?
They did the punishment issue go to the jury or to the judge?
It went to the jury. Yeah. It was the jury who gave him 15.
I'd like to know the makeup of the jury. If it was black, white, men, women, young, old. I have found recently that on the defense side, we're getting jurors now who are seeing what defense attorneys truly do, which is fight. We hold the government to their burden. They feel empowered that they're the last line of defense of government tyranny. And they're getting fed up with abuse of powers, with corruption, with the government overstepping their bounds and expecting the people to just be complicit and comply with what they want and what they say.
If you were sitting on that jury, what do you think the appropriate punishment? What was your number?
Now you're talking to me personally.
Well, but here's the thing. So the prosecutors asked for 30. Or more than 30, I think. Maybe 30. At least 30. And the defense argued that it was a crime of passion, so that it should be 2 to 20.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Punishment.
So can you explain what a crime of passion, what it does in the punishment phase?
Well, I mean, it lessens it down to the next. I guess in this one it would take it down to from a first degree, to a second degree.
So he was looking at 5 to life and a crime of passion.
Right.
It'll bring it to 2 to 20.
Yeah, because the murder was first degree, so it takes it down to a second degree.
And if I'm not mistaken, when you bring in the crime of passion, that is also and there's a reasonableness test to it. If I'm not mistaken, it's objectively reasonable.
So you got to think that that's what the jury decided this on to give him 15.
That was a
Right. But they found him guilty of murder.
Yeah.
Wow. All in all, a good job by the defense.
Good job by the
But they're going to appeal because they think there were errors in the trial. But
What do you
I mean,
think
look,
the errors
appeal,
were? What were the errors?
I don't know. I don't know specifically, but I mean, look, that's the standard, right? I mean, you're going to appeal. Now, also, the prosecutors are contemplating additional charges for aggravated assault because, recall, there were other kids, there were other teenagers in the car. Remember, he shot into a car full of teenagers.
They're coming back after him.
Well, because they're not happy with the sentence.
Well, that's their fault. You know, it's nothing worse.
Well, but think about it. I mean, they've got potentially multiple victims there. Each
Well,
one is
agreed.
each one is a case.
They had their shot. You know
They
what's
got a conviction.
nothing's worse than a prosecutor's office.
See, this is
Like,
the rub.
come on.
But wait. Back up a little bit, because this is the rub. This is the police officer shootings. Okay, has been the equivalent to me of the criminal defense Trump problem before Trump came along. No, seriously,
Yeah,
true.
It is, because I mean, here's the issue. Our nemesis is cops, right?
Right.
And you hate
All the time.
You hate them beating the crap out of your clients. You hate them shooting and killing people. But you got to
claiming
defend them.
resisting arrest.
But then when a prosecutor, comes
Right,
out, I mean,
yeah.
pick a lane, man.
Well,
Pick a lane.
And-
This
and I
is
think-
the tough part for the defense part, right?
Yeah.
And I think this case is everyone nationwide was looking to see
What was going to happen?
what was going to happen in this case. And I think it does set a precedent. And it keeps people honest because, I mean, let's face it. I mean, you got a badge, you start shooting, you rarely get indicted. And a case like this, if handled well, and it seems to be that they're handling it well, can set a precedent for what may happen here. And let's say, another Jordan Edwards gets shot here in Houston. And so, at least for me, you can't win all the battles, but getting an indictment, getting a conviction, and getting a sentence, man, look, I think that's a step forward.
A lot of people the headlines could not leave out the fact that it was a white cop and a black kid. How is that even relevant?
Well,
I mean, is it in a court of law?
well, that's a big question, right? I mean, what role does race play in a court of law? And I think it plays a huge amount. It plays a huge amount.
I think
It's
so
not-
also.
it's- I mean, there was just recently a huge article in the American Bar Association Journal about race and jury panels and jury selection. So I think it's a huge thing. I mean, you think about it. If you are defending a black or a Hispanic or any kind of minority defendant, you want to try and get as many minorities on that jury as possible, right?
Definitely.
I'm looking for the
You try-
craziest
you-
vato on the jury, man.
Right?
I mean,
That's what we're always
absolutely.
trying to do. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a jury of your peers.
Right.
I mean, you want people that look like your client.
Right.
You don't want the opposite. And so it plays a huge role. I mean, look what happened with how many times did DAs try to strike, minorities and come up with these code names? How many times have they been
Yeah.
caught doing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we tried cases where, you've either put Batson out there or thought about putting Batson out there? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you might have had 6, 7 minorities on the jury panel. At the end of it, you're like, man, there's not one. Like, you may get, and I remember the first case I tried, and there was, in my opinion, an inordinate amount of minorities in the panel. Not in the panel, in the veneer. And realizing that at the end of it, I didn't get one. I got an alternate. And it was like my first, and for various reasons. It was my first taste of, man, it's hard to get a jury of your peers for a minority defendant.
I've started to see, at least in Harris County, some more diverse panels. Some more. I've started to see.
And you guys should walk over to 515 Rusk and see what the panels are.
What's it look like over there?
Majority white.
You gotta wear glasses.
It's majority white, highly educated. You got a lot of people with graduate degrees. I mean, it is, because what happens in federal court, particularly here in Houston, is you are drawing from a much larger pool. You're not just drawing from Harris County.
Where are you drawn from?
You're drawn all the way out as far as Brazos County.
Oh man.
Wow. You know how pissed I'd be if I was in Brazos County?
I had to drive in for
Yeah.
a jury. Yeah.
To get up for this?
Yeah. I mean, but that's what you're learning. I mean, you're getting people from rural counties. Not a lot of minorities in the rural counties here. It's that are surrounding, contiguous to Harris County and the immediate. I mean, in Waller County, Austin County, you're not.
Yeah. What are you looking to do when you're trying those cases? When you're picking those juries?
Yeah, I mean, the hard thing is it depends on the type of case, right? I mean, if you've got a complex business white collar crime case, you tend to want more highly educated jurors.
True.
To understand financial transactions, to understand that, to be able to look and say, well, it might not be just what it is on its face kind of thing. You want people who will put some thought into it. I mean, I'll tell you straight up, and I think most people are like this, in federal court, as in state court, most of the time you don't want anybody who comes from a ultra-conservative religion. You don't want it on a criminal case.
True.
Period, end of story.
True.
You probably don't want a teacher.
Definitely.
Teacher's always out.
More than likely, unless it is a very specific case, like a white collar case that has some nuance to it, you're probably going to eliminate engineers, right?
True.
Because there's square peg, square hole, round peg, round hole.
Unless it's DUIs.
There is black and white.
Engineers on mine.
Maybe, because they might understand some of the flaws.
True.
in the computer system.
True.
But I mean, I think for the most part, they are plug and play, black and white.
True.
X plus Y equals Z. So, what is your ideal juror, right? And how does race play into it? I mean, I think that is a big component. So when you talk about race, one of the first things you do when you get the jury cards, what do you highlight? Race.
Race.
It's the first thing you highlight.
True. True.
As the lawyer, that is a first thing you go to.
You look at it. You look at age. You look at race.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel?
You look at race before you look at gender.
Do you feel that? I just don't know, as far as younger people under 40, under 30, 35 and under, I just don't know how much race still plays. I've been going back and forth on it.
Do you think jurors, like as opposed to 10 years ago, before the advent of all these, social media clips and, because now these shootings are televised. Do you think jurors are more educated now as opposed to like 10 years ago?
I think.
Yes, and I will say this. So I think not only are they more educated, but I think that the repeated playing of them, the exposure, the constant exposure, I think, has started to change people's minds. I mean, I think, honestly, I think that's why you saw, literally think about it. And I'll tell you this right now, I guarantee you, all of our grandparents could not even fathom the day when a police officer in Dallas, Texas, would be a white police officer in Dallas, Texas,
Both Springs
would be convicted of murder of a black male. Wouldn't happen. I mean, the thought in their mind would be, no way, never going to happen. I mean, for our grandparents, that would never have been a thought. Now, I mean, because he probably wouldn't have got charged in the first place. But I mean, that would just never even be a possibility in our grandparents' generation and probably our parents' generation too.
True.
I mean, it's just.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I think it's changing.
Well, I think what it's done is, I think, we always talk about what's the first thing you talk about in jury selection, how people come in with bias, how they come in, you come in with background, you come in with knowledge to a situation. what has this done? It's exposed people to things that they've never seen before.
True.
That's what a lot of the internet and everybody having a GoPro and a dash cam, that's what it's
Right.
done. You see things that you've never seen before.
Your juries, when they walk in, already have a good idea what you're probably going to argue. They already have they've been exposed.
Right.
You're not the first point of entry to
Right.
a lot of the, whether it's a sexual assault, whether it's just social media has kind of just changed the game.
Well, and I think too, a lot of it, I think that, and I saw this recently, because I think there are some things that people may have in the past been more predisposed to think was a bad thing. If a witness did X, this was bad. If a witness was addicted to looking at porn or cheated on their wife or whatever, I think those sorts of things, those sort of moral flaws, shall we say, in people, okay? Smoking marijuana. But I think a lot of people in the past, if you had a witness that was smoking dope, that would have been a cause for credibility concern. Now, I think what's happened is with the exposure of everything, with everybody. Look at our president. He's been married 4 times. May have had a child out of wedlock. Who the hell knows? But I think that decent and nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. And I think the same thing has translated into the courtroom because we've just seen it so often now. It's not
Folk are
shocking.
desensitized.
Yeah. It's kind of like us. As a criminal defense lawyer, you go to a party and you're talking about things and you'll just casually mention something that somebody's like,
Yeah.
like, whoa, dude.
Whoops.
Where did that come from?
Oh, yeah. I had that happen last week. I was like, yeah, and so-and-so and so-and-so. And then I just realized everyone's just staring at me.
Yeah, because they're like,
Yeah, and I'm like, oh.
that's not appropriate for party conversation.
Are you going to eat that? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, so you've had a diverse background. Did you have a career before law?
Yes.
is it?
So I left the University of Texas, moved here, and
But did you really leave? It's still right here.
I'm still a Longhorn at
It
heart.
is.
I'm
It
still a
is.
Longhorn at heart.
It
But
is.
I moved here and began, practice with a firm downtown for a couple years, and then left there. It's interesting. I started my criminal defense practice at the same time I went to seminary, and so people always ask me,
There's an oxymoronic statement
Yeah.
right there.
this is what people will say,
Yeah.
right?
I went to church after I left the,
Yeah, and so, what I always tell people, I was like, look, do you know who was the best and biggest defense attorney of all time?
Let me say it. Jesus Christ.
Jesus
Christ.
And so people are like, it's like, he advocated for you. You're a sinner, but he advocated for you before the Father to make sure that you were able to get into heaven, not because of anything that you've done, but because of his defense of dying on the cross. And so people look at me like, because they want to engage you, they want to battle. Well, you're always defending bad. I'm like, no. The person you believe that saved you defended you, and so is the issue me, or is it an issue with you?
Right. Yeah.
How you see yourself, and so. I've always felt like I was on the side of the angels. And so I looked at criminal defense as a noble calling.
So you didn't do criminal defense when you first got out of Texas?
No, I was doing general litigation. It was cool, paid the bills. I wanted to actually try cases. And so I made the decision after 2 years, okay, I feel like I've learned all that I'm going to learn here, and I struck out on my own.
What made you, did you specifically go out on your own to do criminal defense, or is that something that just kind of fell in?
No, it was particularly to do criminal defense, because I wanted to defend the rights of those who were accused. The background that I came from, My parents were immigrants, but I've lived here most of my life. In most of the neighborhoods I came from, the people who were my friends, who I went to school with, who I hung out with, I mean, there were times where I probably would have needed a defense lawyer. And in fact, I've been represented by one before in the past. But I think growing up like that, I realized people like me need somebody like me to advocate for them to advocate on their behalf. And so I've always just been intrigued by the criminal defense system and criminal justice reform.
Where'd your parents come from?
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
So yeah, they came here in the late 70s. My dad came here to come to school and make a better life.
You said you lived here most of your life, but you lived somewhere else out of the state?
Well, no, I've lived. When I say most of it, I've lived in Texas for most of my life, but I've never lived. I was born here. I was born in D.C.
Oh, how long did you live in D.C.?
About 5 years.
Nice.
And then we moved to the South, and so I'm a Southerner.
Where'd you move to the South?
Arkansas first, and then Texas.
Nice. And then you went to OU?
So you made the affirmative.
Right.
More's coming out.
Yeah.
You made the affirmative choice to cross the Red River.
I did. I thought when I was going to school, look,
this has gone downhill.
Yeah, it's gone downhill. But listen, I went to Oklahoma, got a great education there, got a scholarship to go, and then I became a missionary to the University of Texas, brought some swagger.
Yeah.
And we started winning some games.
You still got family back in Nigeria?
Yeah, most of my extended family lives in Nigeria.
One of my friends recently, he's at a kind of a boutique firm. He's part of their criminal practice, and he defended a man over in Africa to help out as part of their kind of exchange of justice program. Have you ever thought of doing anything like that? And going back, I mean, I know they have programs like that, and I'm curious if you've ever thought.
I haven't. I mean, I'd be curious to hear more about them.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I want to get him on the show. I'm begging him to come on because he's now an international lawyer. So I want to. I joke with him and say, now you're an international lawyer. You handled a case in West Africa.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I never even knew that you could go over and participate in things like that. But apparently, in a lot of third world countries, you can go in and actually be part of helping put together and bring up, some of their criminal justice.
Well, it's interesting. So I've done some work there, but not unrelated to the law. But one of the things I'll say this. I think as flawed as our criminal justice system is, it's one of, if not the best in the world. Because when you go to places where the rule of law does not exist, that's. Have you guys ever seen Sicario where he says you're in the land, you're in the land of wolves and you're not a wolf?
Yeah.
That's kind of like when you go to some of these places, and so I think that while our system needs help, and we're part of bringing that. I think when you go to a place where the rule of law doesn't exist, you realize how thankful you are that you do live in America and you do have due process.
Well, and that we do have people who are constantly trying to make the system better. Mm-hmm. I mean, just like you said, we've probably got the best system in the world. And granted, I mean, I know we incarcerate more people than any country in the world, but I certainly, having seen some of the prison conditions in some of these other countries,
right?
When I was locked up in Thailand, I kid, I was never locked up in Thailand. I'm joking.
No, but I think the fact that we can sit at this table and critique a system and still be a part of that system is a great freedom that we're afforded.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, I tip my hats off to, we got a lot of work to do, but I think, when you travel the world and see that the rule of law doesn't exist in a lot of places, you're thankful for what we have and what we're able to do.
How hard was it for you? So you did a couple years, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get in, we've got the phone lines open. 713-807-1794 is the number if you want to call in. For our guest Patrick and Ngwolo, myself, Julio, whoever you got a question for or a comment. We also have Twitter going at HCCLA_TV. So you were a couple years at a big firm, and then you went out on your own. How did you find that transition? And did you find a mentor? How did you make the transition from big law to solo practice and completely going into a new area? 'Cause a lot of people, I think, law students and lawyers, they wonder about that.
Yeah, so I'll be completely honest. It
Well, that's
was
what we want. We want honesty.
yeah. Well, you know.
We don't want you to jerk our chain around.
Yeah. Hopefully not. It was rough at first.
Yeah.
Because you leave and you forget that you have this support system around you. Little things like, dang, I got to do the filing.
Got to make my own copies.
I got to make my own copies.
Is that why you went to the seminary? So you're like, oh shit, I need some Jesus in my life.
Right, man. It was tough because just like you realize that I got to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that you're not taught in law school, and you don't learn the first couple of years in anybody's practice, is, man, the laws of business. And thankfully, I had some people, one of them who was instrumental, Cornell Williams, who's a defense attorney. Like, first thing he told me, he said, man, look.
He's very shy, Cornell.
Really? Okay. Yeah, no, he's the opposite of shy.
Sarcasm.
Yeah, like he literally looked at me, he said, man, look, you're great at practicing law, but let me tell you something. I know you're terrible at business. He's like, come, let me help you develop the business end of your practice so that 10, 15, 20 years down the line, you're able to pay your bills and you're not stressed and you're not burnt out. And so one of the things that, man, I'm so thankful for was like somebody took me aside and I worked in his office for a while, and he just taught me how to do business. And it was a great help. Like just charging a client the appropriate amount that you should charge the client. And even if you're gonna go down, I was quoting ridiculous amounts of money that should never be, at least in my opinion. And he was like, no, you need to charge appropriate to. And if they say no, dang it, at least when they refer you to somebody else, that person's gonna come back and ensure that they pay you what they should pay you. You don't want people like nickeling and diming you because you can't actually practice law. So I'm so thankful for guys like Cornell, guys like Vivian, who taught me how to try a case, Vivian King. And those two are like mommy and daddy who, one taught me the business, one taught me how to try cases.
So you go to big law, you jump out on your own. Is that when you went to seminary?
Yeah, I literally did it all at the same time.
Where'd you go?
I went to Southwestern.
Georgetown?
No, here. So there's a extension of Southwestern Baptist Seminary here.
Baptist?
Yeah, it was a Baptist seminary.
You know, there was recently, I think one of the biggest Baptist megachurch out in Dallas. That pastor just recently had dinner with Trump.
Yeah.
You hear about you see that?
Yeah. That's
What's your thoughts on that, man? I mean, just in a sense of do you feel that there's this idea that there's this Christian base that is just supporting Trump? Is there any truth to that, and why or why not?
So to answer your question, I think a preacher speaks truth to power, not getting cozy with the power. And I would say that if it was Trump or Obama.
Sure.
You know. But I do think there's this dangerous element of, in my opinion, Christianity that's practiced that you can't see the difference between Christendom and Christianity. And I think Trump is, frankly, when people are looking for saviors, not that, I always tell people, like, Jesus died for you. You don't have to
Right.
Like Trump's not gonna save you. He's not gonna change anything. But I think he's caught onto the pulse of there's a group of people in the country who believe the country's gone a certain way, and that Trump is the person to take it, and he's pulled on their fears, and he's the person to take it the other direction. And I think people have bought it. Hook, line, and
Part of it also is too, people have just been so fed up with the status quo. And I mean, part of me thinks that as flawed, and that's probably being kind, as he is, even a lot of people who I know who support him don't like a lot of his rhetoric. You know, they say, I don't really like this.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But what I do like is he's bucking the system,
right?
And he's shaking things up. And I mean, to me, I think that's what a lot of people are willing, and especially in the Baptist churches and some of these evangelical churches,
yeah,
they are happy to see the status quo being shaken up, so to speak.
Yeah, at the expense of those of us
Right.
who are on the fringes of society. Like I personally had there's a brother of mine. He is Mexican, but he grew up here. He came here maybe when he was 6, lived in a housing complex not far from here. We were able to take him in, and he graduated from TSU, finished his third level CFA program. Brilliant guy, but like he literally had to leave town.
Yeah.
Because he felt like, look, at any moment somebody might, his mother's is a citizen, but he isn't. At any moment, he might be deported, and so I don't know, when I hear the whole rhetoric of Trump changing things and whatnot, I think about my brother who is here legitimately. He's on. He's a dreamer, but feels like at any moment the life that he's built could be gone, and he could be deported at any moment. So I don't know. Those things,
yeah, for sure,
resonate.
Two things. The first, have you ever had your own flock? Do you have your own church?
Yeah. So I'm a pastor at a church right now called Resurrection Houston.
Do you feel that there's a difference between, let's say, a black church or a white church, and in their support of Trump's policies or not? And look, I'm not saying Trump's good or bad on this show. I'm not.
Yeah.
We're a nonpartisan type of deal.
Yeah.
NPR just did this huge thing about Trump's dinner with these Christian pastors. It was a big deal. The biggest mega churches in the country are all sitting there and supporting Trump. And I saw black ministers, white ministers, but in your own experience, do you feel there's a difference between those groups?
Yeah.
And two,
yeah.
Adrian Garcia was talking about the decline of Hispanic or Mexican American people being enrolled in schools because there's a big population of them that are undocumented, and they're afraid that if they go to school, immigration is going to come and pick them up and wipe them out.
Right.
So relating back to your brother, which we can talk about in a second.
Yeah. No, I think that there seems to be like an evangelical industrial complex that I don't think it sees color. I think the rise of these mega churches are mostly multiracial organizations.
Right.
A lot of times led by...
Well, I don't mean to be cynical, but they do see a color, it's green.
This is true. We can bring it all out. Let's bring it all out. Yeah, I think it's green.
Yeah.
It's big, mega. And I think that regardless of what color, I think that there is a certain buy-in to the Trump phenomena. But I do think that the traditional African-American churches, we never fully buy into any one politician. You may attend the events, you may, send some money, but a lot of it is like So for instance, like who I vote for is not, I don't put that out there. It's not
Sure.
a public thing. I'm not trying to sway a vote. And so I think there's a prophetic witness that an African American church is probably going to try to keep. And you're going to say, look, we respect power. We understand that government is placed there for our benefit, but we're going to speak truth to that power. We're not going to be co-opted by it.
I have a question for you, looping back to our previous conversation about race and juries and in the courtroom and everything. So I want to throw religion in there.
Okay.
So you grew up Baptist.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the religion of your church now? Is it non-denominational? Is it evangelical? What is it?
So I would say it's Baptist.
Okay.
It's a Baptist church.
So my view, rightly or wrongly,
Right.
and this is a notion that I want to kind of question you about, is for the most part that there are religions, regardless of race, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but that are far more conservative leaning than others. I view the Baptists, the Pentecostals, those type of more evangelical
True.
religions much further to the right spectrum.
True.
And I don't really distinguish between white, black, Hispanic. That's more of a religion thing. And so
True.
when it comes down to picking a juror, let's say, when it comes
Right.
down to jury selection, I tend to view those people are going to have a lot more trouble with the presumption of innocence.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of those people are going to be like, kind of like the church lady on Saturday Night Live.
True.
You must, if you're here, you must have done something wrong, kind of thing.
True.
So whereas, the Jewish religion, Catholics, they're more towards the
More
left.
mainline, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, those religions, not so much worried about their ability as much as this.
True.
I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
So I would tend to agree. I think
Do you think race plays a role in it or not at all?
I do think race will play a role, because if there's an African American church mother who happens to be in the veneer of the panel, if you speak her language and you're able to, she's going to be a little more gracious, because she probably would have had sons or grandsons or nephews who have been part of the system and who she's had to, shell out a few $1,000s for. And so, whereas, yes, she might be dyed in the wool Baptist, be at church, twice a week, there's a certain graciousness that, certain empathy that she, Jesus-like even, right, that she's going to exude, that I don't think you would see if it was a, conservative evangelical white grandmother who might be in the audience. Because I think some of it is proximity. It's like, if you've never been
You've
there,
never experienced it.
you don't understand.
And that's the hard part about jury selection, right? Is how do you get these people to tell us what your experience has been?
Yeah.
Because if all things are equal, you've got 40 people in a jury panel.
Right.
And you're sitting there and and you can't talk to every single one unless the judge only gives you 30 minutes. And you've got to make the choice between, an African American Southern Baptist
Yeah.
or a white, Catholic.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
it
it would depend if I'm in a kitty case or if I'm not.
Yeah, you gotta look at the case.
Yeah,
Sure.
cases matter too.
depends on what I'm
Cases
looking
matter
at.
too. I mean, but every case is different. I mean, that's the thing. It's like so much goes into everything, and being able to hear about people's background. Because you're right, people come from so many different backgrounds.
How do you
It's not the same.
How do you identify those? And I'm asking this just as a practice tip. I don't think you can ask, "Hey, are you Catholic?" Or can you? Or are you Presbyterian? Or are you?
Well, it's on their juror information card.
On the state side, it says, "Are you Baptist or Catholic?" and such. I don't think I've seen that. Maybe in the federal side, it's there.
Federal side's there.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the state side, it's not there.
Yeah, I think you get, for instance, like my voir dires, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just lead with the joke of people think, you're a lawyer and a pastor, how's that coincide? And then I then get to, well, I think Jesus is the greatest defense attorney ever.
Right.
Go right there in jury selection.
Right there in jury
That's
selection.
bold.
Because you know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to see who I'm dealing with. Like,
Yeah.
What do you think about that? And some people like, yeah, I haven't
Because
thought
that's a
about
pretty
that.
uncomfortable thing for people in a large group. Somebody starts throwing around.
The J word.
Yeah, and I started off with it's a joke, like, hey,
Yeah.
guy, because they ask you, does anybody know this person? So, of course, I'm like, have you ever seen me in your church preaching or anything like that? Da da da. And so, but I'm trying to see how gracious, I'm trying to see the empathy level of the people that I'm dealing with, and it does
That's so
help.
tough though. How do you judge empathy in people?
Well, I think you
Just
ask.
in a couple questions.
Well, I
That's
think
just
sometimes
so hard.
you throw that out there and
Yeah.
and you say, what do you think? It sounds controversial that Jesus is the, if Jesus would represent a, fill in the blank type of person. What do you think about that? I don't know. When I start hearing like I don't knows and
It's funny. So you go for the ones with empathy. I just try to find the skeptics.
right.
Skeptics.
I've been having.
Well, because a lot of times, sometimes my
libertarians-
clients need some.
I mean,
empathy.
honestly, if I could
Yeah.
find people who believe that the Earth was flat, I'd be like, "You're on."
Yeah,
Yeah.
on.
You
You're
are
on the
totally
jury.
Yeah.
Libertarians have been treating me real nice recently.
Have they?
Libertarians.
We got about 30 seconds left. What's your final thoughts on that?
That it was a pleasure and an honor to interview, to
Well, I
sit
thought you were
here.
going to follow up on the libertarian thing, but
I usually do. I usually put a Ron
if you wanna-
Swanson
if you
thing
wanna-
up there.
If you want to give him his
And-
farewell,
and-
I'll give you that.
It's been an honor and privilege to sit here and for you to be a part of the show today.
Thank you.
And I hope you come back.
No, I had fun.
I hope you feel treated nicely as a Sooner coming on this program.
Don't usually people razz me to death, but you guys were gentle about it.
Well, it was your first time.
Well, thank you.
We're not going to be so nice the second time you come on.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys.
And hopefully after mid-October, we're going to be a
11
lot
and
more
1.
aggressive. So
11 and 1.
I hope they're both 5-0 going into the game.
We got to
That's all
see if
this-
we can go to a game.
Yeah, we do. That's all the time we have for this week, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you tuning in. For our guest, Patrick Ngwolo, and my co-host, Julio Vela, I'm Jimmy Ardwan. We'll see you next week. Good night.